Chapter 1. Winter's Resurgence. The light was endless, an infinite expanse that would have overwhelmed any other, but Winter continued his eternal walk towards it. The gods had unleashed their most potent attacks in an attempt to destroy him. However, Winter, ever the strategist and innovator, had adapted his weapon to sample the very code of the gods' power. What was intended to destroy him was about to become his salvation. As he approached the blinding luminescence, he did something unprecedented. He stopped. Standing at the threshold of what seemed like eternity, he declared, "I am Winter, and I must leave this place." His mind, always calculating, had already foreseen this scenario. He was prepared for every possible outcome, his strategies laid out with meticulous precision. From this void, Winter began to extend his reach, connecting his essence to the realm of the gods. Small trails of light, barely visible to the mortal eye, began to search for the gods' hidden sanctum, the sacred place where they retreated to regain their power after their exertions in the mortal realm. Winter's essence, enhanced by his heightened cognitive abilities and the data harvested by his weapon before it was obliterated, scanned the entire realm in mere moments. He located the sanctum, a feat no other man or god had accomplished. With his target in sight and his objectives clear, Winter focused on the next phase of his plan. Using his newly acquired powers and the advanced instruments integrated into his weapon, he initiated the creation of a portal. This wasn't just any portal. It was a gateway that would breach the wall between the mortal realm and the sacred space of the gods. An enormous explosion of godly energy shattered the wall of reality as the portal stabilized. The fabric of the universe trembled at the audacity of a mortal transcending his boundaries. With a step that resonated with the force of destiny, Winter walked through the portal, emerging into the realm of the gods. The implications of his arrival were monumental. By entering the gods' domain, Winter challenged the fundamental laws that govern the balance between the divine and the mortal. This act was an affront to the gods, a defiance of the natural order, and it was sure to provoke a response of unprecedented magnitude. As Winter stepped into the sanctum, the air thick with divine energy and the quiet power of slumbering gods, he was ready. His actions were set to ripple across the realms, potentially reshaping the dynamics of power forever. His return was not just a rebirth, but a heralding of a new era, where the lines between God and man might blur into oblivion. What happens when a mortal challenges the divine on their own ground? What are the consequences of altering the fabric of reality? These questions hung in the air, charged with potential, as Winter stood ready to face whatever came next. His journey had taken him from a mere mortal to a player on the cosmic stage, and his game was far from over. Winter's Ascension. As Winter emerged from the portal, the fabric of his being was in flux, not yet fully formed. With a deliberate focus, he channeled his newfound powers to reassemble himself. Now cloaked in a deep red cloak and donning his familiar chrome mask, his new guise symbolized his transformation from a mere mortal to a being of significant power. "I have the power of the gods," he murmured to himself, his voice echoing slightly in the vast emptiness of the divine realm. "But I need more. I need the gods' energy." His thoughts briefly turned to his deeper motivation. "Mara, we shall soon be together again." As Winter advanced towards the slumbering gods, 3 ethereal images appeared before him, each one a sentinel, emanating from the gods' collective will. "You must not approach the gods, mortal," they warned in unison, their voices blending into a harmonic caution. Winter, undeterred, walked past these images without so much as a glance. His resolve was clear, and no spectral guardian would dissuade him from his path. Each god was located in a different part of this celestial realm, each ensconced in a stronghold that reflected their essence: the vampire god, the undead god, and the lycan god. "I require all of them," Winter declared, his voice resolute and unwavering. Scanning the horizon, Winter chose his first target, Necros, god of the undead. He began his trek across a desolate landscape, a land of the dead where bones and the bodies of the fallen lay in abundance. Each step crunched and crackled underfoot, the ground littered with the remnants of countless battles and forgotten tragedies. The terrain itself seemed to breathe desolation, with skeletal trees clawing at the sky, and a thick fog that curled around his ankles. As he walked, the air grew colder, and the light dimmed, as if the very atmosphere was tainted by the presence of death. This was Necros' domain, a testament to the god's reign over decay and demise. Up ahead, the sanctum of Necros loomed, a dark fortress that rose out of the barren landscape like a monument to desolation. Its towering walls were adorned with carvings of the undead, scenes of eternal unrest and sorrow etched into the stone. The gate, a massive structure of iron and bone, stood ajar, as if inviting Winter to enter. Winter paused for a moment before the gate, taking in the foreboding structure. His journey had led him to this point, a confrontation that was inevitable yet filled with unknowns. With each god housed in their sanctum, drawing on their energies would not be a simple task. However, Winter was no longer a simple man. He was something more, something that even the gods had not foreseen. As he stepped into the shadow of Necros' sanctum, his resolve hardened. This was the first of his confrontations, and he was prepared to claim the power he needed to achieve his ends. The fate of the realm, of Mara, and of himself would be decided in these encounters with the divine. Of the confrontation at Necros' sanctum. Winter stepped into the sanctum of Necros with an air of calculated resolve. The sanctum was a cavernous space filled with the essence of death and decay, manifesting the very core of Necros' power. Across from him, seated on a throne of bones and shadow, was Necros himself, the powerful god of the undead, his presence radiating an aura of formidable power. "You have chosen death, mortal." "Here I am all-powerful," Necros declared, his voice echoing ominously throughout the sanctum. Winter, unfazed, took a seat across from him, his demeanor calm and his intentions clear. Winter began to explain, his voice steady and confident. "It was you, Necros, who have chosen the god's demise. I calculated that you would interfere in the game of the gods. This sparked enough of a disruption to help me regain my consciousness in the void. Had you not done this and played fair, you may have won. But unfortunately for you, I have manipulated you since day one." Necros, angered by Winter's revelation, rose from his throne, his form becoming a swirling mass of dark energy. "Nothing can survive death, mortal," he snarled, unleashing his most powerful attack, a torrent of necrotic energy that could obliterate anything it touched. Winter simply stood and absorbed the power Necros threw at him. The energy, dark and potent, seemed to flow into him, filling him with every ounce of divine strength Necros wielded. "Thank you. This is exactly what I needed," Winter said calmly, a slight smile playing on his lips. With a small gesture of his hand, he unleashed a counterforce that was subtle yet devastating. The entire sanctum of Necros exploded in a spectacular display of light and shadow, every ounce of godly power absorbed by Winter in the process. Necros, caught in the backlash of his own unleashed power and the cunning counter of Winter, screamed, "No! Impossible! I am death! I cannot die!" But his words faded as he crumbled lifelessly to the floor, his reign ended by the very mortal he had deemed insignificant. "One down," Winter remarked coldly, as he now set his sights on the next god, the vampire god. His steps were measured and purposeful as he exited the remnants of Necros Sanctum, his power greatly augmented by the energy he had absorbed. The landscape of the divine was shifting, and Winter was the catalyst for this change. As he prepared to confront the next deity, Winter's strategy was clear. He would use the gods' own powers against them, turning their divine strengths into their ultimate weaknesses. The game of the gods was evolving into a battle for supremacy, with Winter positioning himself as a new kind of deity, one forged from the ambitions and failures of the old. The fall of Nocturna. Winter's journey across the land of the vampire god was like a descent into a nightmarish abyss. The landscape was grotesque, with blood-soaked grounds and bodies strewn across fields that stretched as far as the eye could see. This was a parasitic land, where every plant and creature seemed to thrive on the corruption and decay of others. Vines with vein-like tendrils wrapped around the fallen, draining them of any residual essence, while the air was thick with the scent of iron and despair. Every step Winter took was accompanied by the squelch of blood-soaked earth, painting a horrifying tableau of Nocturna's dominion. Upon entering the sanctum of Nocturna, Winter was immediately confronted by the vampire god himself, who appeared as a tall, imposing figure, cloaked in shadows that seemed to drink the light from the room. "How dare you enter the sanctum of Nocturna?" the god boomed, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "No mortal may be here." Winter, unfazed by the grandeur or the wrath of the vampire god, looked directly at Nocturna. "You possibly had the highest chance to win this game, but I have been pulling the strings since day one. Now your only hope is to surrender," he stated calmly, his voice resolute amidst the oppressive aura of the sanctum. Enraged by the audacity and the calm demeanor of Winter, Nocturna's eyes burned with ancient fury. "I will drink your blood and your soul," he snarled, unleashing a devastating attack. Powerful shadows surged forward, extensions of Nocturna's will, designed to steal the very life from all things. These shadows had obliterated armies and swallowed entire villages in despair. But instead of harming Winter, the shadows seemed to be absorbed by him, drawn into his body as if fueling him further. Winter stood, unfazed by the onslaught, his figure becoming a conduit for the very power Nocturna wielded against him. Without a word, Winter raised his hand, channeling the absorbed energy into a counterforce. A massive explosion of godlike energy erupted, the backlash devastating everything in its wake. The sanctum, once a place of dark reverence, crumbled under the force, stone and shadow blasting outward. When the dust settled, Nocturna lay on the stone floor, his energy depleted, his form barely more than a husk of the powerful deity he once was. "One more," Winter said quietly, turning his attention away from the fallen vampire god. His confidence was unshaken, his mission clear. With each god he faced, he absorbed their strengths and made them his own, becoming something more than a god, a being forged in the crucible of divine power and mortal ingenuity. As Winter left the ruins of Nocturna's sanctum, the land itself seemed to mourn the fall of its god. The air grew colder, the blood-soaked earth beginning to freeze as if the very life of the land had been extinguished with its master. Winter's path now led to the final deity, the lycan god, Lysanor, where the ultimate confrontation awaited. The convergence of power. Wasting no time after his confrontation with Nocturna, Winter continued his quest across a field that was a stark contrast to the lands of the other gods. Here, in the domain of Lysanor, the grass was lush and green, and the vegetation thrived, an embodiment of nature and life itself. This landscape was vibrant and full of energy, reflecting Lysanor's essence as the deity of life and nature. As winter approached Lysanor's sanctum, the air grew richer, filled with the earthy scent of growing things and the vibrant hum of life. The sanctum itself was integrated seamlessly into its surroundings, with walls covered in climbing vines and openings that allowed light and air to circulate freely, blurring the lines between the built environment and the natural world. Upon entering the sanctum, Winter was immediately greeted by Lysanor himself. Unlike the hostile receptions he had encountered from the other gods, Lysanor's demeanor was calm and welcoming. "Welcome, Simon," Lysanor said, his voice resonating with a deep connection to the earth. "I have foreseen this day." "Indeed," Winter replied, his tone acknowledging the inevitability of their meeting. "It seems my lycans have some type of bond with you," Lysanor continued, his eyes searching Winter's. "Your lycan?" Winter questioned, his expression hardening slightly. "If it were not for me, they would all be dead now. You left a cub alone when you could have aided him," Winter accused, his voice tinged with reproach. "Yes, but I had foreseen your intervention, Simon. I knew what must happen. None of us could be trusted to restore the world as it was, not even me. But you have a drive that exceeds petty greed or the need to win," Lysanor explained, his gaze intense and earnest. "Will you restore the world as it was, or make a better one without the gods?" Lysanor posed the question not as a challenge, but as an inquiry into Winter's intentions. Winter, momentarily pausing at the gravity of Lysanor's words, responded not to the philosophical inquiry, but to the immediate task at hand. "Are you ready?" he asked simply, his mind already moving towards the conclusion of their encounter. "Yes, but there is no need for dramatics. Take my hand, and my power is yours," Lysanor offered, extending his hand in a gesture of surrender and trust. Winter reached out and grasped Lysanor's hand. Within moments, a surge of power flowed from Lysanor to Winter, a transfer so profound and complete that it seemed to dim the very light of the sanctum. All of Lysanor's power, the essence of life and nature, was now integrated into Winter's being. With the power of all three gods now his, Winter stood amidst the sanctum, the sole arbiter of immense divine abilities. The gods lay defeated, their powers absorbed by a mortal who had transcended his limitations. Winter now possessed enough power to restore reality, or to shape it anew, according to his vision and will. As he left the sanctum, stepping back into the vibrant field, Winter contemplated his next steps. With the fate of multiple realms in his hands, the choices he made next would define the future of all existence. The question now was not just what he could do, but what he should do with the unprecedented power at his command. The final act. "It is done, Mara. Inevitable," Winter murmured softly, his voice a mixture of resolve and weariness. The conquest and absorption of the gods' powers had culminated in this moment, yet Winter knew his journey was not yet complete. "But there is one more thing I must do," he acknowledged, understanding the full weight of his next actions. Transforming his appearance from the godly visage he had adopted in the Divine realm, Winter reshaped his image to one more suited for the mortal world. He needed to blend in, if only for a moment, to complete what he started, without drawing undue attention from the remnants of the realm's inhabitants. Summoning the combined powers of the gods, Winter created a portal from the godly sanctum directly into the realm the gods had created. The energies warped around him, bending and twisting as he stepped through, moving through reality itself. The portal was a conduit through the very fabric of existence, a path that led him back to where it all began. Emerging onto a battlefield, Winter found himself in the midst of chaos. Hundreds of undead assaulted the stronghold of the lycans, their relentless siege marking the desperation of their final push. The undead rushed by Winter as if he were invisible, his presence too advanced, too alien for them to even recognize or comprehend. From his vantage point, Winter could see the stronghold below. His eyes then caught the Alpha, whose expression was one of resignation and completion, perhaps sensing the end of all things. Behind Winter's mask, what remained of his humanity allowed himself a small, sad smile. This creature, this Alpha, had shown resilience and bravery, traits Winter once admired in his own kind. With a mere gesture, informed by a resolve to end the suffering and chaos once and for all, Winter unleashed a devastating wave of power. The entire lycan stronghold and every undead surrounding it were obliterated in a massive explosion that shook the very ground they stood on. Simultaneously, across the realm, the Dark Castle, the Bone Castle, and all the human strongholds and camps suffered the same fate. An all-encompassing burst of godly energy eradicated every structure, every life, and every remnant of the conflict that had plagued this realm. Nothing remained. Not a single being, living or dead, survived the purge. Only Winter. As the dust settled and silence overtook the realm, Winter stood alone amidst the ruins of a world he had effectively reset. The powers of the gods, combined with his own vision and determination, had allowed him to enact a cleansing so thorough, so absolute, that no trace of the former chaos remained. Now the realm was a blank canvas, waiting for a new reality to be drawn. Winter contemplated his next steps, the burden of his actions heavy on his soul. He had the power to reshape worlds, to redefine existence, but at what cost? As he looked around at the emptiness he created, the scope of his decisions weighed heavily upon him. The future was his to mold, but the path forward was unclear, laden with the responsibility of his newfound omnipotence. Rebirth of reality. With the remnants of the old world fading into oblivion around him, Winter focused his entire cognitive ability and every ounce of the godly power he had assimilated. His goal was clear: to erase what remained of this corrupted reality and reconstruct it anew. This was not merely an act of power, but a profound responsibility that he bore alone. From the inky blackness that enveloped everything, a new reality began to take shape. It was the reality as it had been before the gods' interference, pure and untouched by the chaos and destruction that had followed. The stars twinkled into existence one by one, and the universe around the world began to shine anew. Piece by piece, the world was reborn, each element meticulously restored to its pristine state. This monumental task stretched what might have been centuries in any normal understanding of time. But here, in the flux of creation, time was a malleable concept. Finally, as the last fragment of reality clicked into place, completing the grand tapestry of the universe, Winter collapsed, utterly exhausted. The godlike powers and essences he had harnessed were all consumed in the Herculean effort of rebirthing reality. His body felt heavy, his mind overwhelmed by the enormity of what he had accomplished. Lying on the newly formed ground, Winter's breathing was heavy, his eyes staring up at the clear blue sky he had restored. For the first time since embarking on this path of manipulation and power, he questioned his actions. "Did it work?" he murmured, his voice a mere whisper against the gentle breeze. Then, breaking the silence that surrounded him, a familiar female voice reached his ears, soft, yet filled with emotion. "Simon, where have you been?" The simplicity of the question, so normal and yet so poignant, struck him deeply. It was Mara's voice, the voice he had longed to hear through all the chaos and destruction, the voice that had driven him to the edge of divinity and back. Her presence confirmed that his efforts had not been in vain. The reality he had strived to restore was not just a replica of the past. It was a continuation, a true resurrection of the world they had lost. As he turned towards the sound of her voice, his heart, which had been weighed down by the burdens of godhood, felt lighter. Mara was here, real and alive in the new world he had recreated. Winter rose to his feet, his fatigue momentarily forgotten, replaced by a rush of relief and joy. The questions and doubts that had clouded his mind faded as he stepped towards Mara, ready to embrace the life he had fought so hard to return to. The world around them was pristine and peaceful, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had preceded its rebirth. Winter had not only restored the world, but perhaps in doing so had found his own redemption. As he approached Mara, each step was a step back into the life he had once known, away from the divine conflicts and cosmic battles. Here, in the quiet reality he had resurrected, Simon Winter could finally come home.